Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. And today I wanted to build out an HTML and CSS app. So this is basically what the final product is going to look like. It's really simple, but I wanted to do this kind of to help show some creative people how to get started with web design. And also I wanted to show some people who are already interested in web development how to get started at least. But yeah, so Trinket.io, this is where I would recommend starting. You should create an account and then create a new Trinket and go to HTML. So yeah, this is an HTML project, and with Trinket, basically it's always going to be running our code, and we'll see it immediately right here. So you don't need any prior experience at all. Um, I'm just going to try my best to explain what I can, but if I can't explain something, then uh, I don't know, honestly. Maybe there might be some other better tutorials out there, but this is a project-based tutorial, and with any project-based tutorials that I do, I don't want to get too in-depth with every little detail, but in my next tutorial, which is going to come out, I think it's going to be a Python tutorial. It's going to be a series, and I'm actually going to start going more in depth into it. So to start, an HTML file should start with doc type HTML. So basically, this right here, don't worry about the syntax yet, but this is basically telling that this is an HTML file. Is it needed in Trinket.io? No, but it could be needed in some other things. I'm not 100% sure what it would be needed in, but I always just leave it there just to be safe. But so next, I actually want to teach you guys a little bit about the syntax. So um, in between brackets, or these little pointy brackets, the arrow brackets, are going to be, these are what are known as tags. And inside tags, we want to um, include what this section of code is all about, basically. So right here, what we want to do is we want an HTML tag. So this is where our HTML will go into. And this right here, the little backslash, that basically tells the interpreter, I believe, it tells it that this, um, that the HTML tag is ending. Um, but yeah, so in here, we want a head tag. So a head tag includes a lot of information about the website, basically, from what I understand. So let's do title, and we want a title, right? Um, so this title, it's basically what will show up here. Right here it says trinket, right here it says tutorial, right here it says notes, and the way I got it to say notes up here is by using a title and then say notes. Now you're not going to see it right here, unfortunately, but it's just something that's good to know. So next we want to have our styles in here. So what styles? So for all the creative people who are watching this, who want to get into web design, this is basically where we're going to be designing the website, giving it all of these little styles, basically. Um, so next up is our script. So sometimes a script tag goes in the head. Sometimes it goes um, in our body tag, which we're going to get to. But I think I'm going to keep it in the. No, I'm actually going to be moving it to the body. You guys can keep it here if you want, but I want to move it to the body just because that's how I created this in the first place. And I think it looks a little bit more readable. Anyway, next we're going to create. So outside of the head tag, we want to create um, a body tag. So in here, it's basically the main part of our HTML. This is where we actually get to see everything. So first, I want to put my script down here, and we'll just do it like that. So we'll get to the script later. Let's close that for now, and we'll get to styles later. The script is actually the real code, so if you guys are trying to get started with coding, that's where I'm going to go into basic, bare basic JavaScript. But if you guys want to learn coding, stay tuned for my Python tutorial instead. Um, so in here, we could write anything, and it will show up in here. And that's how simple it is. Um, Now, obviously, you can't just make a website just like that. So what we want to do, we want to add in a header tag. So header tags is h1. Um, and let's just leave it like that for now. So let's do hello world in an h1 tag. So as you could see, it's styled like a header. And the thing is, there is headers from 1 all the way down to 6. So there's an h6 tag. But for now, that's what we're going to do. So this is, since this is our notes app, let's just have it with notes as the header. And so next up, um, actually, I'm just going to, no, let's do, I want to create a div. So a div is like a section of a website. So I would say it's like, I guess it stands for divider or something like that. Not 100% sure, but let's do a div right here to go around the node. And this is going to become important later. So next we want to create another div. So this div is for our header, and this div is going to be for our content. So in here we're going to want a text area. So in here we can type stuff, and yeah, it's that simple. So this is cool and all, but I want to mention that this is not how you collect data normally. Normally, they have what's called forms, and with forms, we submit a form and it gives us our data, and we could work with our data. But I don't want to go through that because that's a lot more coding type stuff, and I want to do a lot more design stuff in here. Um, Also, it's a lot of stuff, and I don't want to go through it. I'd rather just do it like this because it's a lot simpler. But it's not as safe. I believe that's what it is. Um, so next we want to add a button. So we have a button right there. And basically what we want, so we're going to say this is where we type in our note, and this is where we're going to add it. So say add. So there we go. Right now the button does nothing, but we will get to fixing that later in the video. Um, and then, so yeah, that's the top section of our content. Next, we're going to want, basically, um, when we create the script, we're going to want to render out multiple, basically, all the notes that we have saved in our data, in our basically makeshift database. So to simulate that, since we don't have the script for it yet, we're going to just simulate it with divs. So let's say, sorry, no. Yeah. So this is going to be where we actually put in all our notes, and every note is going to be in its own div. So each note, each little div is going to be a paragraph tag. That's what the P is. The P is for a paragraph tag. We're going to have the note. Let's say, so let's say this is like a to-do app, right? So let's say to do, on a walk dog, right? And then we're going to want a button. Let's go with button. And it'll say done. So basically, whenever we're done doing this, we could click the done button and it'll go away. So actually, let's say to do instead. It's our to do app. There we go. No, I'll keep it as notes just because it looks better. Okay, so this is basically what it's going to look like. But before I add in more notes, because I want to add like maybe 3 of them, um, I want to introduce attributes. So each tag could have an attribute. Um, the first one we're going to go with is class. So classes are basically uh, so that we could target um, certain elements. So each tag is so all this is one element with another element in here. Actually, I want to go over that real quick. Each element, so the div class or the div tag or the div element, inside it, it has an h1 element, and basically that is known as the child node or the child element of the div. And we'll get more into that once we go into the JavaScript part of the video. But for now, um, classes help identify stuff when we're adding styles to this. So if we say div, we want to change all the divs to be uh, the color green, right? That won't work because we have so many divs. So we want to specify the class so that we could just target it by its class instead of by the element name. So let's call this class header. Um, and we're going to be adding in sorry, I think no. We leave that alone right there. Um, and then we want let's see. Okay, so H1 isn't going to have anything, but we want actually first of all we're going to want a space in between notes and the actual notes. So in here we could do HR, which is a line break. Oh, this actually explains a lot of stuff of what I was doing earlier. So that is not what we want actually. So you can see what HR does right there. We also have BR, which is just like a line break. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to use. So there are special characters that you could write in. I don't know too much about them, but they add in a space in between basically. And we'll see why this is important later. This is basically space, and we can't see it, and that's it. So, oh, actually, I wanted to mention too, in our text area, if we add text, that's what is going to show up inside the box. I'm trying to see what else I'm missing. Okay, next up, we're going to do ID. So IDs are used to be targeted by the script instead of from the styles. You could still target IDs from the styles, but it's generally used for the script. So we're going to call this app because that's the main app that we're going to be working with in the script later on. But so next up, let's see. Sorry, no, this is so we're going to do that, but down here. And instead, this is going to be class content because this is all our content, right? Um, and then next up, we want so each of these divs, we're going to want them to be different. So for that, we're going to do so each of them are going to have a class of notes so that we could style them the same. but they are going to have an ID of P for the paragraph. This is just an ID that I'm making up on the spot, right? So P because they are paragraph tags, and then we'll go by their index starting from 0. And we'll get into why we're doing that later on. So take this and do it 3 more times. 1 and 2. And so walk dog is our first note, or yeah. Second, let's say uh, take out trash and code. So there we go. There are more attributes that you could add to elements, but we're going to get into that later. Um, and also, these are the only real ones that you would need for styles, I believe. Actually, another thing you could do in here, you could change the height of an element off of pixels, but I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to do that in the styles instead. So let's get started with the styles. So first of all, this is ugly. This is light mode. No one likes light mode. So instead, we're going to do body, and we have these brackets, and we're going to have, basically this means we're targeting the body, and inside the brackets is what we want to happen. So let's start off with background color. So how do we pick a background color? There are some words that work, for example, green, but not all of them work. So if you say dark black, that's not a real color. So we can also do it with uh, a hash value, hex value. That's what it's called. So there is black, right? And we know it's black because all the values are set to 0. Now this isn't digital art class, right? But that's just so that you guys could understand this. So we don't want it that dark. I'm going to make it that color of gray. And now the words aren't very visible. So let's do color white. There we go. Now we can see the words better. Um, so each semicolon marks the end of the line so that the interpreter knows when to stop reading what value we want to give to, for example, the background color. Yeah, and then what we want to do next is we want to display it in a certain way. We want it to display it as a flex box. Now, what is this? I'm not going to get too into it, but basically it means um, these every child element of the body is going to be set up in a line basically, and it helps us style, for example, nav bars. But I'm not going to get too far into it right now. There's a nice video. I think it's called "Flex Boxes in 100 Seconds" by Fireship. Fireship makes some really good short videos. You guys should go watch that YouTube channel. But that explains it pretty well, I believe. So next we want flex flow. So flex flow is how we want it to show. Right now it's in flex flow rows. So let's make it call. There we go. So now it's back to the original. The reason I wanted this is because of notes, and I'll get to it. Actually, I'll get to it right now. The header. So the way we target, we don't want to target every div. We want to target just the header. So what we do dot header. So in here, we want the background color to be darker than the rest of the website. So we're going to do 444. Sorry, lighter. So there we go. And so the problem is Let me... So as you can see, it's really, really ugly the way that's set up. So what I do, we change it to a flex box. Um, and you could actually see this a lot better if you go right here to the inspector. Whoa, to the inspector. Um, I believe the padding, uh, no, I think it's the margin that gets colored in if we use a flex box um, for the child element. But we're not going to get too much into that. And we're going to set margin to 0, because even though that's what the inspect showed, the margin was outside. I feel like that's a padding that got colored in, but we're not going to get too far into that. Um, so next up, this is real ugly. Notes is right up next to the wall. So let's do padding. Padding is, so basically, as you can see here, every element, it has the element inside, and it has padding, then a border, then a margin. So yeah, that's all. It's really weird. But so we want to add padding. Padding is inside the border, and the border is inside the margin. So we want to add a padding of 10 pixels. That adds padding right here, and it actually adds padding everywhere. And we don't necessarily want that, so we could do padding left. So that's just padding on the left side. Next up, we want to change the content. So now for the content, background color. So we want it to pop out a little bit more, right? So we'll do 777. Is that too bright? Yeah, that is too. That's way too bright. Okay, let's do 5. That's good enough. Um, so right here we also want padding on the left of 10 pixels. Um, so I'm just going to say this real quick. This is really slow, the way that I'm doing all this. Um, when actually designing it, it's a lot faster. Plus, it's a lot more of like, oh, what works, what doesn't. And I just wanted to mention that for anyone who's interested in web design, it's not this boring. There's more to it. There's a lot that I'm not going over in this video. Um, so what I was thinking is I got this idea from Dennis Ivy. He had a cool little notes app as well. I want to add like this gray section. I want it to be its own thing in the middle instead of colliding with the wall on the side. So let's do margin. So margin is what doesn't get colored in. Margin of 15 pixels. There we go. Now, as you can see, that got moved down, and we don't want that. So I'm going to do left and margin right pixels as well. So there we go. Now it gives that little floating type feel to it. So real quick, I wanted to mention this. If we were to take out that little space that I mentioned from before, they'll be right up next to each other. And I didn't want that, so that's why I added in the little space. So next up, okay, let's start styling these notes right here. So they're really ugly. Like, why do we want the done at the bottom? We want it next to it, right? So let's put the note. And what we're going to do here, we're going to do, so note is the parent of the paragraph and the button. And we want the paragraph and the button to be lined up. What works in this situation? Flexbox. So let's do display flex. Now it's next to each other. Now this is a problem. We don't want that, right? So I wanted to show you guys two things real quick. So justify content. Set that to center. This will get centered. So justifying content is an attribute that will um, align it vertically. But we don't want that. That looks really ugly. So instead, there's another attribute which is align items. Um, so if we do that, it will align it to center, which is nice, but also it got rid of the extra padding that we did not want. So that's nice. And then so this is annoying, right? It's right next to each other. We don't want that. So there's an attribute called gap, which does not work in Trinket. Um, there's also row gap, which also does not work in Trinket. But we have access to column gap. So what's column gap? It's the gap between the columns of the flexbox. So let's do 10 pixels. There we go. That looks nicer already. Um, so next up, let's style these buttons. These are basic. This looks like some 2000 like six buttons, right? It's so old looking, old style looking. So let's target buttons. And what we want to do, I actually took this from my um, Django project that I created. Um, so I'm taking everything from there, copying it over. So it might not be the best stuff, but it's better than what we have here. We're changing the color to that nice little green color. Um, padding. So there's different padding horizontally and vertically. And to do two different values, we could do 5 pixels. So that's the first value. And that if we only give it one value, it'll do the same padding everywhere. But I think that's height. Height is always first. So next we want 7 pixels for vertically. I think it might be the other way around, but there we go. Now these buttons are still really ugly. We're going to do border radius 7 pixels. That will round out the um, outside of the border, the corners. Next up, we want so it has this little ugly border, right? So border, say none, and that gets rid of it. And there we go. We have our buttons now. Now here's the problem. I don't know when I'm hovering it or when I'm clicking it. So we want to target it again, but this time we're going to use what I think is called pseudo elements, pseudo style, something like that. I forgot. But so hover, right? This means basically when we hover it with the colon mark. Um, and now, so when we hover over it, we want the background color to change to 4DD6A2. There we go. Now we know when we're hovering over it. Clicking it is a whole nother thing. I forgot to add that in to the tutorial, but I'm sure you guys can find that on your own. So next we're going to target the text area because again, that looks really old and ugly. So background color, we're going to make this. So the background color looks really bad right now, but in a second, once we're finished up with the rest of the little attributes, we are going to make it look even better. So Um, so we want, so first of all, when we're typing in here, it has black characters and you can't see that with the gray background. So color white. There we go. And now we can see the characters. Um, then we want border. As you guys can see, there's an ugly border. So we want border to be none. So right here, I want to show you guys the width and height attributes. So right here, we can change the width. It could be 10 pixels or 15. Oh, sorry, pixels. But we want it to be 150. There we go. We could also change the height. So we could do like 3 if we wanted to, 3 pixels. But we want this to be 30. There we go. And now as you guys can see, we could resize this. And whoa, it might have looked better if I would have had it this big, huh? But it's bad to be able to resize it. It could be useful for some people, but we don't really want that. So let's set resize to none. That now we cannot resize it. Now here's another problem. That looks ugly. The blue, it stands out. It's not the right color for all of this. So how do we fix that? Well, first, okay. So first I want to do text area focus. So with the pseudo whatever element thing, focus, well, border to be none and outline to be none. I don't know if outline does anything, but I'm keeping it in there for safety. So if you guys are normal and are on Google Chrome, that will be fixed. But oh wait, it fixes. Oh my god. Okay, that's interesting. Because I was using focus visible originally, and I changed these. Wait, what? Oh, so is it outline? Uh, no. Okay, so I don't know if border does anything, but I know outline will make it so that doesn't show up. Okay, originally I thought because at first I did this with focus visible, and it worked. But when I went on Google Chrome to because I'm on Firefox, when I went on Google Chrome to test this out, it didn't work. So I thought Focus Visible was for Firefox and Focus was for Google, but that is not the case. Um, I just wanted to mention that. And actually, I just thought about this. Let's do border radius of 5 pixels. There we go, just to make it look a little better. I actually didn't have that originally. But there we go. That actually looks better. And yeah, so that works. That should work. And there we go. We styled it. You could also add border radius on these elements right here, or you guys could also do space up here for a little. No, sorry. We could probably do go to content and add in padding top 10 pixels. Like that's not completely up on the wall. Um, and to make it nice and rounded like everything else, we could also do um, border radius 7 pixels. So everything looks nice and rounded. But yeah, there you go. That's designed for you. Now, obviously, this is really simple. I could build something way better, maybe. I'm not completely sure if I could have, but there's a lot of tutorials on CSS. It's really nice. You could do some really cool stuff. Um, let's see, let's go to this over here. This is all built using CSS. Everything in every website is used building CSS. So you could create cool looking stuff all like this. And if you have access to the inspect method, you like look at all this and see, okay, where's the div for this? So most likely this right here is like a grid, right? And oops. Um, Grid is another thing similar to Flexbox, but it's a grid instead of a Flexbox. Um, so these are probably all divs inside of a grid. And you can see this is a div and this is paragraph text inside. Um, Also, A tags, as you can see over here, they are for links. Um, but what I like to do, or what I've seen people do, actually, I don't like to do this. Um, but they'll go in here and they look at this. Oh, okay, this is a div right here. So this must have been done with a grid. And actually, yeah, it's right here. You can see it. You can see the CSS right there. And this is how you could like copy. I've seen one YouTuber who copies other websites and like tries to make stuff as cool as them. And yeah, you could build cool stuff like this, and that's the beauty of web design. But I can do that. I'm not. I barely really started CSS recently, but anyway, that's it for now. We're going to get to the script and JavaScript in the next video because this video has gotten too long. So thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully you creative people could start with web design. Hopefully I inspired a few people, but yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.